Hi everyone, the video ahead of us is going to be a rather long one, I suspect. I haven't actually started recording it or anything like that, but considering that there is a lot more to talk about with Fallout 3 than just Fallout 3 itself, I have a feeling this video is going to take at least, maybe an hour and a half to get through, so that's pretty long for a YouTube video. Before we start that, and we actually get into anything in the video, I'd like to just take a few moments of your time to talk about some things beforehand. First off, let me make it clear that I am not going to be speaking about Fallout 3's DLCs, because I do not believe that it would be fair to include the DLCs in a review of the base game, for obvious reasons. Second off, I'd like to take a moment to debunk the notion that I only dislike this game because it's made by Bethesda, which is I know that's going to be a point made against me almost immediately when you just see my name on something, but that is so far from the case that it hurts. Yeah, I don't think Bethesda has been doing very well recently, but I did like their games from a long time ago, and I do have a general respect for Bethesda for not being quite as smarmy as they could be. Yeah, Bethesda aren't a bunch of darling angels or anything. They do some shifty stuff, especially in relation to stretching the truth, but hey, at least they didn't redo the map from their previous game for their new one like Ubisoft did. And they also, to some extent, actually upgrade the engine of every one of their games instead of releasing the same crap every year. So even though they're not even in the same league as somebody like CD Projekt Red, I still think that they're generally a pretty good AAA developer. In comparison to the other crap we have. Lastly, and this one's a little bit more important than the other ones, I do not dislike Fallout 3 because it is a third/first-person shooter RPG hybrid. And more importantly, I do not dislike it because it isn't an isometric RPG, which is one of the reasons a lot of people think a lot of other people dislike Fallout 3, and perhaps that is, a true statement that some people just dislike the fact that Fallout 3 is not an isometric RPG, but that is not the case for me. I actually think Fallout can work very well as a hybrid RPG FPS type game. I absolutely adore Fallout New Vegas, and I really like Deus Ex Revolution, so I am not, against the idea of shooter RPG type things existing. My criticisms of Fallout 3 lie elsewhere, which we'll get into now. Now, I already prefaced this video with something, but there is a little bit of history we have to go through before we can properly review Fallout 3 and help everyone get a better understanding as to why a lot of people don't like this game. Flashback to the year 1994, 22 years ago, when a guy named Tim Kaine, working at Interplay Studios, just decided one day he was going to start working on an engine. For no particular reason, of course, he just decided one day he was going to make an engine. Not even just a game, just an engine. This right here is the, humble origin of one of the bigger AAA franchises that we know and love today. Literally just some guy piddling around an office. Now, I'm not going to get into the entire development of Fallout 1 here because it's not really that relevant, but let's just say Fallout 1 was almost cancelled twice. It was basically considered a B project that just a bunch of dudes were working on over at Interplay, and the team was going to be just divided up and split up to a bunch of D&D projects once the game was done and they actually shipped it out. What we got was a game that was surprisingly successful for what it cost and, took to develop, especially during the time where isometric real-time multiplayer games like Diablo were coming out. People were really excited about all this new technology, and so were producers. Nobody thought that Fallout was actually going to be successful, at least from the higher-up end, because they thought, okay, it's old technology, it's turn-based, it's single-player, it's just an RPG, and they thought, okay, Diablo is making $1 billion, so we need this to make $1 billion too, so they were almost going to cancel Fallout, but what we got was a smash hit, run-out success that basically defied everybody's expectations and sold like 500,000 copies. The game was finished in 1997, and 1 year after that we got Fallout 2, which was basically just a better game than the first one, also selling for about 500,000 copies. Despite the breakout success of both of these titles, considering the very limited amount of resources actually required to develop them, it was not nearly enough to save Interplay, the company that was producing these games, from going under. For those of you who don't know the history of Interplay, basically it was a huge RPG developer for a very long time that did a lot of D&D based projects, and was eventually the producer and distributor for Fallout 1 and 2. During the end of its lifespan, Interplay was facing a series of financial troubles and was unable to recover even to this day. To save themselves from actually going under and filing for bankruptcy, they had to sell off quite a few of their properties, one of which was Fallout, being sold away in 2003. Not only was Interplay failing and forced to sell the Fallout license, they also disbanded the team, Black Isle Studios, that was developing it in the midst of developing one of the games, Fallout Van Buren. Van Buren was developed for about 4 years and was somewhere between 80 and 90% completed before it got shut down and the products were all just sold away. The licenses were gotten rid of, all the people involved in making Fallout were not only disbanded from their team, but were either redistributed to other projects or were just straight up fired. And that was basically the case for what Fallout was going to be until Bethesda purchased it in 2004. But not only did Bethesda just purchase it from Interplay in 2004, they also outbid Troika Studios. Troika Studios was a small developer made up of ex-Fallout about developers who had left the projects earlier. Basically, Black Isle, the people who were making the first two Fallouts, had some people leave before the 2003 deadline, and went on to form Troika Studios, who made a variety of CRPGs in the early 2000s, namely 3 of them. Their games were actually quite good. You've probably heard of one of them, which is actually not a CRPG, I was wrong, as Masquerade Bloodlines, one of the few good vampire games that has ever existed. Fortunately, after being outbid by Bethesda, they had to shut their doors in 2005, just 2 years, or actually just 1 year after the bidding took place. And from there on, Bethesda developed the next Fallout game. Basically, to condense and explain the reason why I told you all this history is because it is a very important reason as to why people don't like Fallout 3. Essentially, what happened was that Fallout 3 was something that was going to happen, and it was going to be in the style of a game that a lot of people really enjoyed. But because of basically the mishandling of a larger company that had more or less nothing to do with it, nor did they really care about it, and the outbidding of another large company that had nothing to do with it up until the point where they bid on it, Fallout 3 never happened and became a completely different game. Not only that, but Van Buren was slated to be one of the few games in the CRPG genre that were going to survive the 2000s and 2010s. I don't know how many people are actually privy to this information, but CRPGs, also known as games that are party-based, top-down, like Baldur's Gate and the original Fallouts, basically ceased to exist after the 90s. It was only up until about last year, or perhaps the year before, through the help of Kickstarter, that CRPGs really came back in even any kind of force. I wouldn't even say they came back in full force, because we only have a few games to the name of the genre. And as much as I personally appreciate the efforts of inXile and Obsidian Entertainment, these two studios cannot hold up the entire genre on their own backs. They are going to need help that they are not getting. So while the future of this genre has looked brighter in the last few years than it has in the last 10, it's still not exactly the brightest light in the universe. And that right there is another very big reason as to why a lot of people don't like the way Fallout 3 became the game it became. Because a lot of people perceive it as having a game that they were promised stolen away from them at the last minute and replaced with something else that they didn't want. I'm not saying this to try to sway your opinion or anything, I'm saying this just as the facts and to try to create a bridge of understanding between the communities. And I say communities, plural, because I really do personally think that Fallout 3 actually caused a schism within the Fallout community and kind of split it up into these two big camps of people who do like Fallout 3 and people who really don't like Fallout 3, surrounded by like a couple of stragglers who just really don't care. And I try to create this bridge to, in an attempt at least, to nullify anybody who's going to come out and use one of those non-arguments that people like to use when it comes to Fallout. Namely, the you don't like it because it's new one, and the you do like it because you just like Bethesda. And no, I'm not really a fan of the whole Bethesda fanboy or really any kind of fanboy arguments. I know for a fact there are people out there who just like something because it's Bethesda or just don't like it because it's Bethesda, but I have a feeling those people are a lot more rare than we make them out to be. And on the opposite side, anybody saying people just don't like Fallout 3 because it's new or retarded. With this 7-minute introduction out of the way, let's actually get into critiquing Fallout 3. As is the usual for my critique/review type videos, we're going to be doing this in chronological order, so obviously we have to start at the beginning. Fallout 3's opening title script. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, so last time I reviewed a Fallout game, I took quite a long time to talk about the intro, but I'm going to keep this one brief because we've already had a very long intro ourselves. For a very long time, I didn't really like the Fallout 3 intro, but as I've come back to it now, I actually have to say that it's not as bad as I thought it was. In fact, it's really not that bad at all. It's pretty good. There's a couple of points I want to make about it, however. One good, a few bad. First off, this game does the initial death of a family member way better than Fallout 4 did it. It's no surprise to anybody watching this video, hopefully, that in Fallout 3, in the very first moments of the game, your mother dies giving birth to you. Very similar to the situation in Fallout 4 where the character's wife dies like 11 minutes into the game. The reason I like Fallout 3's example of a dead family member much more than I like Fallout 4's is because it doesn't expect you to know who this character is or care about them beforehand. Both the player and the character don't know who their mother was, and the game doesn't expect you to know who they were, nor were they expecting you to be invested in this character. Like, yeah, the mother probably played a big role in your life, or more so your conception in the life of your dad, but the game doesn't expect us to get any kind of investment in this character because, well, they're dead immediately, and they died giving birth to our character, meaning that they don't fill some role that we never got to see or have some kind of influence on our backstory that we never actually get to be invested in. Like, yeah, this character does still fill a big role in the shaping of your character and the people immediately around your character, but they also die immediately once your character is born, meaning that we never get a chance to actually have them fill a role in our lives. Unlike in Fallout 4, where the wife has supposedly filled some kind of huge role, having a child with our character, knowing them for, at least 9 months, and all this character development that we never get to see, only to die 11 minutes into the game before we, as a player, can become invested in them as a character. In Fallout 4, your character is invested in the other character before they die, but the player is not, and it creates this weird dissonance. where the player doesn't really care about this huge moment in the character's life. In Fallout 3, the character doesn't care, and the player doesn't care at the same time, because we can't care, we're just a baby, and it works so much better. Because honestly, I don't care about my mother in Fallout 3, because I never knew who they were. And my character wouldn't probably care as much about them, because they didn't know who they were. You're not being punished as a player for not knowing who this person was before you could even get a chance to play the game. I mean, the wife dying in Fallout 4 could have been some huge emotional scene in the storyline had they actually given her time to be a character, but they didn't. And yet they still expect this to be some huge emotional moment 11 minutes into the game. Fallout 3 does the exact same thing, but doesn't expect you to know who this is, nor does it expect you to have an emotional attachment to them beforehand. I cannot believe that in this point in my life I am using Fallout 3 as a positive example of something, but I guess that's where we are now. On to the stuff I don't like. I really do not like the amount of railroading that goes on in this opening sequence. Not from a gameplay standpoint, of course. I'm fine with having a very linear opening sequence to teach people about what a video game is, because, I mean, for a lot of people, Fallout 3 was their first real video game. I'm talking about from a story perspective about where they railroad your character down a very specific path with very specific details already laid out for you that you cannot leave to your own imagination. Of all the real Fallout games, Fallout 3 is probably the one with the most railroaded handheld backstory for the player character. Not only do you know where you were born, you know what age you are when you leave the place you were born, you know who your parents are, you know who your friends are, you know who your bullies were, you know who your teachers are, you know who your dad's friends were. You know what your hobbies were, you know what happened on your 10th birthday. And I mean, yeah, they let you have a little bit of freedom in the vault as to how you react to certain things. Like, you can, kinda treat Butch as slightly more of a friend, or I guess just slightly better, or not. Like, you can be kind of mean to him or kind of not, and you can be kind of mean to Amada and kind of not. That's kind of the way it goes for everybody, but generally the roles that you have with everyone in your vault are kind of set in stone. And personally, as someone who likes to roleplay in his role-playing games, and no shocker, right? I am not a big fan of this. I like to be able to come up with my own characters and my own backstories. I personally believe that role-playing a character that you come up with yourself actually adds something to a game. Allows you to exercise your creative muscles and just add little sprinklings of your own personality into your experience. And for people who usually only play a game one way, it can kind of force you to experiment with what your character would do instead of what you want to do as a player. And that can create plenty of interesting things. Like, say my character's backstory is that he grew up in the NCR, but I really like playing Legion in Fallout New Vegas. Well, I guess I can't play Legion this time, because if my character's from the NCR, he's probably not going to sign up with the Legion, is he? You can take it a step further. Maybe I also want to go around killing everyone who says they dislike the NCR. Maybe I'm some kind of fanatical nationalist fucking murderer. And if I want to take it even a step further, I could go around and only support, like, NCR pro-businesses or something like that, or try to, you know, steal from people who don't support the NCR and run them out of business. That's one of the reasons I really like role-playing, is because it allows you to play a game and craft your experience to a very special set of rules that you wouldn't have if you just played it as yourself. As a player, I know exactly how to be, like, the most efficient in Fallout New Vegas. You go north, you avoid all the Good Springs bullshit, and you try to get power armor and laser weapons as early as possible. You go and get Veronica, and you start the Brotherhood of Steel shit after you finally, you know, spend enough time with her, and you fucking just get free power armor, laser weapons, shit like that. That's how you do it. But if I play the game from the perspective of my character, I'm not gonna know what the most efficient way to get around New Vegas is, nor will I care. Because when you're playing from the perspective of your character, unless your guy is some kind of, like, I don't know, just yourself reflected onto a character, you're probably not going to care about the most efficient ways to level up, because you probably won't even know what leveling up is. And yeah, of course, you as a player can also just do all this experimentation on your own, but if you've ever played a tabletop game, you'll know what I'm talking about. It's really a lot of fun to play a different person than yourself, because it's not something you can do in anywhere else. And it's different from acting, because it's not like a pre-written character either. It's one you come up with and can change whenever you want. It is, in my opinion, one of the most important things about role-playing games is to allow somebody to actually role-play. Fallout 3 doesn't do as much of that as I would like, because while it does allow you to have your own personality to some degree, you can either be kind of a dick or just kind of a nicer person, it doesn't allow you to have your own backstory, which is a very big part of literally any character ever. Characters in a game like this usually need to have some kind of backstory to explain where they come from, what their views are, and why they think that way, because if you don't know this already, I don't know how you don't know this already, but where people come from and who they grow up around very much affects how they view the world. And personally, I would like to be able to custom tailor that to whatever I want it to be. to fit my experience, to make my gaming experience just more fun. And I know what somebody's gonna say. They're gonna say, oh, but MisterCaption, you can just, you just fucking ignore the intro and do it yourself, yeah? You can just make up your own backstory. And if I'm going to ignore the entire intro to the game, then I think the intro has kind of failed its job. But to get back to the review, after 19 years in the vault, Amada wakes us up in the middle of our sleep to tell us that the vault has been overrun with radroaches, that our dad has left the vault, and that we need to go and find him and escape before we're gunned down by the security forces inside the vault. We do so armed with nothing more than a 10mm pistol, a BB gun, and some other crap, and eventually make our way outside of the vault to finally see the Capital Wasteland. And one little nitpick I have here is that I actually really like this opening sequence. Or perhaps sequence is the wrong word, maybe scene is a little bit more fitting, because I really just like the way this looks. Like, if you just not move after you load into the Capital Wasteland for the first time, after the fade goes away and your eyes adjust to the overworld, it is really, really scenic. This just first little, like, picturesque moment. You see the kind of wild, immediate destruction before you, and you can see Springvale, or whatever it's called, in the middle, and then you can see all the actual destruction along with some American monuments that are going to be very, very familiar for anybody living in this country, especially on the East Coast in the far distance. I don't know what it is about the way this landscape is built, but I just really like it. Now that we've come into the actual open world of Fallout 3, it's time to address the non-linear structure of this game versus Fallout New Vegas, which is a big point of contention between people who are fans of these games. From my personal point of view, I think everybody is really, really overhyping how linear the start of Fallout New Vegas is. And yes, it is more linear than pretty much any other Fallout game, but it's not like you are absolutely incapable of going anywhere but the side, like, eastern path leading up to the north. You can go directly north of Good Springs if you're good enough. I have shown it multiple times on this channel, and I think I'll try again for this video. However, I do agree that Fallout New Vegas is a little too linear, especially with the Cazadors to the western side of Good Springs. I really just dislike that. Because there's a lot of fun stuff to the west of Good Springs that I wish you could explore just as a first-time player, and just allow people to go where they want in the beginning. If Obsidian really wanted to prevent people from going somewhere, like, I don't even know where what's to the west of, like, New Vegas that they would want to prevent you from getting to, perhaps the New Vegas ruins? I have no idea. But if you really wanted to prevent people from getting into that portion of the map, you could have just made, like, a small little chunk of stuff to the west of Good Springs and allowed people to explore that, and had, like, mountains separating it and make people go the other way. Just something to give a little bit of air of exploration to the game at the very beginning. I do, however, like it in a certain way because it allows me to strive towards something. Like, yeah, I can't get through these Cazadors now, but I'll be able to get through these Cazadors later and explore all this awesome stuff. Fallout 3, on the other hand, doesn't do any of that kind of stuff. It just has a world that more or less scales with you in every way, and keeps all of its awesome stuff to the outer reaches of the map, because you start generally in the center, kind of, like, you're slightly off of the center where Vault 101 is located, so they have to keep all the dangerous or really cool and interesting stuff out further away, making it so that you have to at least explore a little bit before you get to it. And even then, I can only really recall a few instances in which high-level mobs were placed in an area to prevent me from going to it. I believe the plans for, I think one of the nuker grenade plans is hidden by a Deathclaw in a small trailer park type thing, in a camper. And I know there is like an abandoned train station that has some Farragoul Reavers in it, or like one or two, but I can't really remember anything beyond that. However, I do like Fallout 3's willingness to just let the player go wherever they want, and entrusting them to at least have the knowledge to probably go to this first town that they generally want us to go to by starting us off pointing in that direction. It's a level of trust I appreciate, because Fallout 4 and Fallout New Vegas generally don't have it. Of the 3 ways to progress through Fallout New Vegas' map, 2 of them are blocked off by really hard mobs, but that doesn't stop you from exploiting your way around it or figuring out a way to get through it. I don't know if Obsidian knows about the rock climbing method or if they knew about it when they were developing the game, but assuming they did, it was probably a really, really sly trust in the player to figure out something like that. Whereas Fallout 4 just starts you off in the corner and tells you that you need to go this direction or you just don't get to progress because there's a fucking wall here. For the sake of progressing this video, we're just going to go straight for Megaton and probably do the main quest before doing any side content, which we will talk about later. This game very cleverly introduces the Enclave by just having a little iBot floating around in Springvale, playing the radio station that you can then go into your Pip-Boy and discover yourself. However, if you look back on this little iBot, it becomes very artificial because you realize it just flies in between 2 points on the map, literally going up and down the same street over and over and over again. After a very short walk through some very safe wasteland, we eventually make it to the doors of Megaton, a giant city built out of the ruins of an old plane that looks like it took quite a lot of work to get together. To open its doors, it reutilizes the plane's turbines to actually make some kind of automatic gate type thing, and there's giant walls made of scrap metal around the entire construct. Compared to other Fallout towns, Megaton is much more, I don't know how to put this it's Mad Maxy, I guess? In the sense that everything about it is this kind of recycled, scrap, custom-made type deal. Normally, Fallout towns aren't built from the scratch like this. They're, made up out of older world constructs like Rivet City, Big Town, Novak, Redding, New Vegas, Good Springs, Prim, Necropolis, the Boneyard, and plenty more that I'm sure you can Wikipedia. So seeing something this scrap-made and custom is quite unique and very interesting on your first go-through. Unfortunately, everything about Megaton then falls apart when you actually get inside the town. The moment I saw that giant active bomb in the middle of Megaton, I realized how little sense the world of Fallout 3 actually makes. Normally I would reserve a point like this for later on in the video, but I do want to talk about this because it's a very big deal and a very big problem with Fallout 3. For those of you who haven't played this game and don't know the story, for whatever fucking reason you're here, I'd recommend you turn this off now because I'm about to spoil basically the entire backstory and story to this whole game. Basically, as we all know, Fallout 3 revolves around water. More importantly, providing clean water to the various settlements of the Capital Wasteland because the current water is so absolutely disgusting, irradiated, and toxic that not only can you not drink it without getting sick after a short or prolonged period of time, but trees and other plants simply can't grow in the rains and rivers around it. Everything about this is fucking stupid, and here's why. Now, before I get into this huge explanation of exactly what's wrong with Fallout 3's world and the premise of its story, I have to tell you exactly where I'm coming from. The following rant, I guess you could call it, is going to touch up a lot on what it means to be realistic in a video game, and personally, I don't think Fallout is a video game that needs to be realistic. I actually don't believe any video game needs to be realistic in any capacity, and I think it's honestly a terrible criticism to say that something in a game isn't realistic. Especially in a game like Fallout, that while it does take place in a version of our world, it doesn't take place in our world itself. The physics of Fallout are very, very different from the physics of the real world. For example, in the real world, we all know prolonged exposure to radiation does not give you multiple limbs, it just kills you. So it's not the lack of realism in Fallout 3's world that gets my goat, it's everything else about it. The thing I have a problem with Fallout 3's world isn't the fact that it's not realistic, it's the fact that it doesn't follow its own internal consistency. Like I said earlier, Fallout does not follow our very basic laws of physics, however it does follow its own laws of physics, and it does have rules to how its world works. And a lot of these do parallel our own world. For example, in Fallout's lore at least, if you get shot in the head, you're probably going to die. If you get too much radiation, you eventually will just kill over. Human beings, and by extension animals, need to eat. Water is required to grow plants. We need air to breathe. If we stay underwater for too long, we will drown. There's a variety of other things, but that's just a few examples. Two of them I listed being very, very important as to why Fallout 3's world doesn't work. Fallout 3 sets up a situation where the water in this place is just absolutely so terrible that plants cannot even grow here. That everything is dead. All the trees are dead. Everything outside of the Oasis, which is only a very recent development in Fallout 3's world, is dying or is dead and does not provide nutrition. The fact that there's no good water in the entirety of Fallout 3's world means that there is absolutely zero ecosystem that can exist here, because I don't know if you guys know this, but water is a very, very important part of life on Earth. This is going to sound very, very shocking to some of you, but please be patient with me. You may actually be drinking water or have drinking water in the past. I know, I'm very sorry to hear the news, but you had to know. But not only is it you who requires water, but literally every living thing on this planet requires water. At least everything that I know of, and no, I'm not a biologist, so fuck off if I miss some kind of microbial being that doesn't need water to sustain itself and lives in a volcano. Everything that human beings and other animals can realistically eat requires water, including plants and other animals. Because there is no good water in Fallout, there are no plants. Because there are no plants, there are no herbivores. Because there are no herbivores, there is no bottom to the food chain. And when a food chain has a missing link, it generally destabilizes and just crashes and burns. Deathclaws eat Yaogwai. Yaogwai eat, like, dogs, ants, and rad scorpions. Dogs, ants, and rad scorpions, maybe not ants, but dogs and rad scorpions eat mole rats. Mole rats eat either other smaller rats and or rad roaches? And rats and rad roaches probably eat the very, very small crickets that we hear chirping about in the ambient soundtrack. Additionally, the vulture, hawk-style things that you can see flying above various areas in the game probably also eat crickets. And I guess Mirelurks, like, filter shit through the water, I don't know. Again, not a biologist, I don't know what a crab eats. So basically, Deathclaws and humans are at the top of the food chain, and everywhere else finds their place within the food chain, eventually bottoming out on crickets. But if there's no plants, what do the crickets eat? Like, really, what do they eat? If they're not eating, then they're dead. That means there's nothing for the rad roaches and the rats to eat, which means that they're... You know how this works, right? I guess you could say the crickets photosynthesize, but even then, do they not need to drink water? And even if they don't need to drink water, does that mean no one else needs to drink water? See, the thing I don't get about this is that I guess you could explain this away by saying that the various animals can drink the water because they're more resistant to radiation, but even then, shouldn't plants also then be more resistant to radiation? Because not only can they very clearly grow in the soil because of Herald, but also they would have been exposed to the exact same amount of FEV and radiation as other surface-dwelling parts of the environment. Did the nukes hit so hard that apparently they contaminated the water and the atmosphere to the point where plants can't exist, and animals can, even though I'm almost positive plants are twice as fucking versatile and hardcore when it comes to actually living in places that they shouldn't be able to than animals are? See, that's the part I don't get. How does anything eat anything if there's nothing to eat? And even if there is some kind of case or explanation for why this stuff should work, why doesn't anybody then eat anything? Looking through every settlement in Fallout 3, the only ones I remember actually having food are Tenpenny Tower. And even then, that's only a few plants at the very top floor of the entire tower. I don't think they're keeping everybody alive on those, like, 3 bushes. In fact, the only settlement in Fallout 3 I remember actually having any kind of source of food is like Andel, and even then, their source of food is dependent on people going near or into their town. And even then, that's assuming they get a shit ton of water off of every person they kill, because I don't remember them having a clean water source either. And again, the only town I remember having an explicitly clean source of water is Megaton, which is kind of the big buzz around that town. And you might be saying, well, who cares? Well, I care, because it doesn't make any sense. Again, it's not that it's not realistic, it's that it doesn't make any sense in the world of Fallout. And even in Fallout 3's own story, if you're going to create a story built around a vast group of people lacking a very serious resource that they need, why do you then forsake any small details showing them getting other resources that they need? Do people in Fallout only need water? In which case, how do they starve? Are we just supposed to believe that no one in Fallout 3 is eating anything outside of what the caravans bring them and what they can hunt? Because I think that after a while, that would not really work very well. Hunter-gatherer societies don't work when everyone's sitting in one spot. The thing I hate about this is that it is very clearly an overlooked detail that could have been fixed just by adding some plant models into the game and having somebody work them. Something Fallout New Vegas worked on in half the time that Fallout 3 was made, with much less money and much fewer resources was able to achieve. It shows that Bethesda clearly didn't care about how their world made sense as long as cool shit was in it, and that's something I don't agree with. I am somebody who is a very big supporter of immersion when it comes to video games, and when I'm looking at a world where no one should be alive, I really can't get immersed in any of it. When I'm constantly asking myself questions as to how anything in this world functions, I think somebody at the world building team didn't do a very good job, I'm just saying. And the thing I hate about it the most is that everybody will always praise Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas and Fallout 4 for all the very small details we see in the world design. But this very major, crucial malfunctioning in the very mechanics of how the world works is just hand-waved away as if it isn't important enough. And when it is included, it probably won't even be noticed or appreciated. I mean, how many people out there are really going to care about the fact that Fallout New Vegas has corn and plants in it? Effectively no one, that's why I have to do it. The developers of Fallout New Vegas actually took time to wonder how their world was going to function on a very basic level. They show off very explicitly where every town is going to get their stuff, what they grow, what they farm, what they ranch, where they get their water in some cases. When I look at something like Megaton, I can't help but think, what are these people eating and how are they alive? When I look at Good Springs, I can see very clearly that they are ranching bighorners and that they are growing maize. I don't have to worry about how the world of Fallout New Vegas works because it's explained right there for me. They get their water from the springs of Good Springs, what the town is named after, and they grow their own food. But it's not just a matter of assuring that the world actually works from a logical standpoint, it's the fact that it also shows just the amount of attentiveness and detail that was put into this world when it was originally built. The fact that the developers of Fallout New Vegas were actually willing to sit down and ask themselves what do these people eat when they were thinking up this whole world just shows how much they actually care about it. They were willing to sit down and ask themselves what could make our game world cool while also asking themselves how does it work. For people like me who are very pedantic about everything they look at in every video game they play, it is very rewarding to know that the attention I'm paying to the details of this world, and just to the game in general, is being rewarded with just something. The fact that I actually wondered, what do these people eat, and got a response back that made sense is fantastic. In Fallout 3, this is disappointing because I paid attention to my game, asked this very same question, and got no response. And I know that this is incredibly pedantic of me, but personally, I prefer it when thinking about my video game doesn't make the experience worse. If you're gonna let me create my character and choose what role they're going to have in this massive RPG world you've created, please forgive me for actually trying to immerse myself in that world. I'm very sorry. But it's not just the biology of this world that doesn't make sense, sometimes it's also the people. This is where it all comes full circle, children. This is where I once again start talking about Megaton. So let me get this straight. The people of Megaton decided, in this game that is constantly shoving it in your face, that this is a very desperate survival situation. Some people aren't even eating 2 meals a day without the help of a book. You're gonna tell me that in this incredibly dire situation where people aren't eating, they've got no clean water, nothing, and it's your job to help them, that instead of building a giant metal city around, you know, food, people decided to build it around a giant nuclear bomb that's active. Even if it wasn't active, it could still explode. It's a bomb. It's like saying unlit dynamite simply can't explode. It's just not how it works. So, yeah. The people of Megaton, what with their opening gates for everyone who doesn't dress like a raider, must be very confident in their ability to detect disguised raiders. Because, I mean, imagine if some psycho just decided one day he was going to dress up in a nice suit, or just some not raider clothes, and go and shoot the Megaton bomb. Or even better, what if some Enclave guy literally just went up in their vertibird and sniped it from like a really high angle so they could get over the walls, and just sniped it? What if somebody set up like a mortar and just bombed the inside of the town, and then the bomb explodes and everyone is toast? Like, yeah, good fucking job, Lucas Sims. You just killed like 300 people by setting them all up in this shitty little town. For what reason did these people build this town other than for the rule of cool? Like, what survival reason? What reason at all? Why did you build this? I'm sorry, I'm stammering because I don't get it. Why? What logical sense is there behind this? And you might be saying, "Oh, Caption, you're okay with it when Fallout does a lot of stupid cool stuff, right? Why do you have a problem with this?" I have a problem with this because Fallout 3 is always going off in your face about what a dire situation everybody's in. Like, they set up this game where they decided everyone was going to be suffering, and then decided to make it so that the serious lore characters that you were supposed to take seriously, Lucas Sims and Moriarty, basically everyone but Moira and the fucking preacher dude, you're supposed to take these people as serious lore characters. Like, this is a part of the main quest to go to Megaton, and they had to make the stupidest decision I've ever heard. Like, Lucas Sims must have just gotten up one day and been like, "Oh, well, you know, I mean, I want to start a new town, but instead of putting that near some food or water or something, we're just gonna build it on this giant bomb. It's not like someone could blow it up. Bombs don't blow up. That doesn't happen." Like, you live in a world where nukes destroyed everything. Why would you set up near one? That's like being born during a hospital fire and then buying a house that has noted faulty electrical equipment. You just think maybe people might be a little bit paranoid about that, right? And it's not like these people don't know that it's a bomb. Confessor Cromwell talks about the splitting of atoms in his religious speeches. Moira knows that it's a bomb. Mr. Burks, or whatever his dumbass name is, he knows it's a bomb. And Lucas Sims named the town Megaton. It's like building your town on an Indian burial ground and calling it The Haunt. Sad part is, this isn't even the only example of people doing completely stupid and inane shit. Like, Megaton itself, that's a relatively isolated incident, right? Whatever. The main problem with people not thinking things through, we'll talk about later when we talk about the factions, because it's a big deal. I have, however, made my point. Let's move on with the plot here. Okay, so now we're in Megaton. Next thing we gotta do is find our dad. How do we find our dad? We gotta go get some information from the local bartender named Moriarty. I actually like this little snippet of the main questline where we have to go get information out of Moriarty, because they allow you to do it in a multitude of different ways. You can either do a speech check to just get it out of him. You can do a little deed for him if you don't have the money, or if you do have the money, you can just give him 100 caps and he'll tell you what to do. Or you can just kill him, go into his terminal and do it that way. Or you could sneak around him and go in his terminal when he's asleep or something like that. Lots of people who tagged a bunch of different skills to all do this quest in their own way if they want to, and has a backup for anybody who can't do the quest in one of these, special ways. Contrast this with Fallout 4, where sometimes you get to have a speech check for like 100 extra caps. Maybe. You can do this quest however you want. I'm just gonna pay Moriarty here and get the information straight from him. He tells us our dad went to a place called GNR, Galaxy News Radio. I mean, we all know what that is. What do I even have to tell you? Which to get to requires we go through the DC ruins. Oh, spooky. On our way through the DC ruins to GNR, we are introduced to super mutants for the first time. And they're not like shoved in our face or anything, they're just there, which is nice. We also get introduced to an unhealthy amount of hunting rifles. The reason this is because Fallout 3, let's be honest, doesn't have that many weapons, especially base Fallout 3 without any of the DLCs. And to be honest, Fallout 3 in New Vegas combat isn't that great. Most weapons don't function all that differently from one another. It's not like Quake or anything like that. It's Fallout. A lot of the guns just sort of feel the same and do the same thing. So at the very least, they could have included a lot of them, right? Like what New Vegas did? No, Fallout 3 had like, I don't even know, 80-something weapons on launch, I think, maybe? And unfortunately, they're trying to encompass, a bunch of different kinds of guns and also melee weapons and explosive weapons into that. So yeah, there's a lot of like variety on a weapon by weapon basis, but even then most of the combat is still just the same, point at the dude and, click. Hope the fucking RNG is in your favor. So personally, I would have at least preferred there to be a lot of guns. That way the world doesn't feel like I'm seeing, the same guns over and over and over again, and there's a little bit more artistic variety. I criticized Fallout 4 for making it so I had to use the same exact pipe rifle 40 different times and see every single raider in the game spawn with a different form of pipe rifle, and I didn't like it here either, where every raider spawns with either an assault rifle, a flamer, or a hunting rifle. And it's especially bad for super mutants, because they don't have any one-handed animations, so they have to use hunting rifles, assault rifles, like rocket launchers and minigun type things. And only that. They can also only wield, like, what, two different weapons? I think they only wield nail boards and super sledges in Fallout 3. And they can't use mines, so yeah, super mutants feel pretty samey. And yes, we will be talking about super mutants later on, don't worry, children. Anyway, on our way to GNR, we get to Fallout 3's favorite thing, metros. Oh, yes! There's one part of Fallout 3 I love, it's the fucking metros. No, but on a serious note, fuck metros. There are way too many metros in Fallout. It's like the same thing over and over and over again. They're so fucking bland. And I don't think I'm alone in this criticism. I don't think anybody likes the amount of metros in Fallout 3. I know they're kind of a necessary evil, because otherwise we would have had to wait even longer for Fallout 3 to be released, because they would have had to add, like, leveled out every single part of the DC area, and making metros is just a convenient way to get to the certain chunks that they actually did model out, but honestly, I don't know, that wait time might have been worth it. Anyway, we go through our metro, and we finally find the Brotherhood of Steel. Sort of. Remember that thing I told you about earlier, how we were gonna complain about how nobody made any fucking decisions that made any sense, and that there was an even bigger problem than Megaton? Welcome to it, motherfucker! It's the Brotherhood of Steel in Fallout 3! Okay, so everybody usually knows why people don't like the Brotherhood of Steel in Fallout 3. It's because they go around helping too many fucking people for their source material, right? The original Brotherhood of Steel from Fallout 1 and 2 are a bunch of xenophobic fucking bastards who just want to hoard all the technology in the wasteland and be a bunch of racists and not have to touch any of the dirty overworld people. They think everyone who's not in the Brotherhood of Steel is a moron and is incapable of using advanced technology because the world around them was destroyed because of people misusing advanced technology. Remember, the Brotherhood of Steel came from the original US military. The founder of the Brotherhood of Steel was there to see all the bombs drop and see the world he once knew turned into the world he knew now. And eventually his teachings of basically telling everyone not to misuse technology and not to allow, the fucking raiders and shit to get their hands on good stuff has turned into this, like, almost neo-religious fascism where the Brotherhood of Steel go around fucking with everybody who has technology and making sure no one is better than them. That's not to say they were necessarily evil either. I mean, yeah, they did eventually start trading with other factions in the wasteland, cities and pockets of civilization. But still, if you had good tech and you went near the Brotherhood of Steel, they were probably gonna kill you for it, or, just force it out of you. However, again, they're not just evil. They did also help keep raider populations down in the core region because, they have all the biggest guns and raiders are fucking dumb and shoot anything for trying to, fucking walk around. Raiders in Fallout 1 and 2 were not very smart. However, to counterbalance that, again, the Brotherhood of Steel also hoarded all the technology they got, including their medical supplies, which a lot of the wasteland could have used. Basically, the Brotherhood of Steel just cared about themselves and not really anyone else. Like, everyone else could die and they really wouldn't give a shit. They're all about themselves. They're isolationists, even to the point of xenophobia, where they just don't like anyone from the outside. I mean, the only recruitment policy for the Brotherhood of Steel in Fallout 1 was go to this place that has so much radiation it'll kill you and don't come back, please. And now in this Brotherhood of Steel, we hear about them recruiting wastelanders all willy-nilly and going around dealing with the super mutant problem for no reason other than that there is a super mutant problem. Like, the Brotherhood's not gaining anything out of these super mutants. They don't have any advanced tech. They use, like, assault rifles and shit, and the Brotherhood of Steel is just killing them just cuz, and they go around, losing all their soldiers and having to hire out wastelanders who they shouldn't like, Bethesda, to work in their armies. And that is ridiculous. And after that, they also care about the fact that no one has any water to drink by helping us get the Jefferson Memorial. And it's not just getting the Jefferson Memorial that they helped us out with. They help us clear it out of the Enclave, which makes sense for the Brotherhood, because they don't like the Enclave, if you haven't noticed. But they also help us distribute water by running water caravans. What the fuck? Why is the Brotherhood of Steel giving a shit about any of the people in the Capital Wasteland? Like, seriously, the people of the Capital Wasteland don't seem to give much of a shit back. Why does the Brotherhood care about helping any of these people? I mean, no one has any food or water, so what do they have to trade the Brotherhood that the Brotherhood wants? Tech? No one has tech. Everyone's living in shitty little houses and a fucking makeshift plane. Only thing I could think any of these settlements have to offer the Brotherhood of Steel is new recruits, but why would the Brotherhood of Steel want these people's new recruits? They think all the Wastelanders are, like, gross and uneducated and dumb. Hell, even in this game, they say that all their new Wasteland recruits are too trigger-happy and useless. Would they even need these recruits if they didn't commit 100% to going out and fixing everyone's problems and therefore losing soldiers? These guys are supposed to be xenophobes, right? However, there is one saving grace in all of this, and the one flaw the Brotherhood in this game has, is the fact that they are just too nice and don't care about themselves. In their mission of going out and helping everybody in the wasteland and holding some of the most tactically retarded positions on the planet, like a radio station that they don't even use to broadcast anything, they just help them out for no reason, the Brotherhood of Steel chapter in the East Coast has begun to basically just falter from what it was. They go around losing soldiers and power armor and weapons all the time to the forces of the Capital Wasteland because they just keep sending soldiers out to help everyone when you can't help everyone. There's dead Brotherhood guys all over DC. However, aside from that, and the schism where the Brotherhood of Steel lost some of their forces because, you know, the outcasts, I don't know why these guys are the outcasts when they're the ones, like, following the main Brotherhood of Steel's actual doctrine, and Lion's Brotherhood aren't. They're the outcasts? Fallout 3 is retarded. Aside from, you know, a couple of Brotherhood corpses in DC and the outcasts splitting off from the main group just because of ideological differences, nobody seems to notice that Lions is literally sending out his troops in Death Squad fashion to go out and die for something they shouldn't give a shit about. Lions has started this personal crusade against all the problems in the Capital Wasteland, and no one seems to care that in doing so he is sending out all of his troops and resources to die in the sand. Does no one in the actual Brotherhood of Steel seem worried that they have to constantly recruit new people to fix all the gaping holes in their roster that Lions is leaving them? Everyone's just super cool with this. No one actually gives a shit, and the outcasts don't give a shit because they only left for ideological differences. They just don't like fucking Lions. I said fucking Lions there, I'm sorry. These games are fucking blending together. I can't tell what's real and what's not real. Help me. Like, seriously, Lions is sending all his dudes out to die with no way to replace them other than, you know, breaking the Brotherhood's one rule of do not associate with the fucking Wastelanders, and everyone's cool with that. Like, you never hear any dialogue about soldiers worrying about how many people didn't come back from a mission or whatever. Everyone's just like, yeah, go Lions, Brotherhood of Steel, kill the super mutants, we got this. And even in the story, the Brotherhood of Steel doesn't seem to have any repercussions for what they do. Like, there is no consequence other than leaving a couple of corpses around the game world to Lions doing this. They always win. They win everything they do. They face like zero hardships. They get their giant stupid fucking robot. They get their fucking Jefferson Memorial shit. They fucking defeat all the Enclave forever and win the game. Just ignore all those dead people. Who fucking cares? We win. Woo! And that's it for the Brotherhood in this game. They just, you know, make a bunch of shitty tactical mistakes and get to win everything forever because they're the good guys. Not even to mention the fact that they're the only joinable main faction in this game. And no, the last-minute decision with John Henry Eden where you go and you poison everyone is not joining the Enclave, okay? You can't join something after you blow it the fuck up. If there's one mistake that the Brotherhood of Steel made in Fallout 3, it's being in this game. They took away a huge amount of player freedom by being the only main faction that you can realistically join, and their fucking mission here makes absolutely no tactical sense for a faction that is supposed to be one of the most tactically sound factions in the entire wasteland. Like, the Brotherhood of Steel have some of the best training out there. That's what makes each individual Brotherhood of Steel soldier so strong. Compare that to the NCR, who give their soldiers, like 2 weeks of training before they send them out into the field? Yeah, they'd get fucked. But hold up, this is a special TV offer. Not only does their mission not make any sense, not only do they not receive any repercussions for any of the mistakes they make, not only do they take away your player freedom by being the only joinable main faction, it also doesn't make sense that they're here at all. And allow me to explain to you why. And to do so, we're going to need to go into some Fallout history. Okay, so after Fallout 2, the Brotherhood of Steel and the NCR, the two big power dogs in the core region, were having a little bit of a disagreement over who gets the technology out of the Enclave base of Navarro. We're talking like advanced power armor, plasma turrets, plasma guns, the stuff the Brotherhood of Steel really wants to get their hands on because they don't trust anybody with it and will give them a huge military edge over everybody else, especially that power armor. The NCR, on the other hand, being, you know, the other big contender in this area, wanted it for themselves to increase the strength of their military. Now, the NCR's military isn't like the strongest thing ever on an individual basis. You know, if you lined up 10 NCR soldiers and 10 Brotherhood of Steel paladins, the soldiers would get their asses kicked. So the NCR wants to change that a little bit. They want to make some kind of, I don't know, honor guard or whatever that has all this advanced stuff. They want to have a little bit of that punch that the Brotherhood has. They don't like how the Brotherhood has all the good stuff. You know, they want a little for themselves to keep themselves competitive with the Brotherhood of Steel outside of just numbers. So, you know, there's a big disagreement between these two factions, which leads into a 30-year war. Actually, I think it's 40 years by the time New Vegas happens. Yeah, a 40-year war between the NCR and the Brotherhood of Steel, which at first the Brotherhood of Steel starts to win, because they have much better soldiers, right? But the NCR just has the numbers. They just constantly throw people at the Brotherhood of Steel until they break. So as the war progresses, the Brotherhood of Steel starts to lose, and they have to retreat back into their bunkers, and they lose a lot of their soldiers and their resources and stuff like that. I mean, you see NCR soldiers wearing their power armor, for God's sake. So I gotta ask, in a wartime situation, and I believe the Brotherhood of Steel that were sent over to the Capital Wasteland were sent in the 2250s? So, 10 years after the war, why in a wartime situation, even if you're winning, would you send a massive amount of your fighting force across the country to a place you know nothing about, don't know how to get to in any real sense, like it's on the other side of the country, but you don't know what's in the way, just to scout out some potential advanced technology? Like, really, they're sending a huge portion of their main fighting force, an entire chapter of people, including an elder and the heir of Roger Maxson, the founder of the Brotherhood of Steel, a folk hero to these people, out across a giant stretch of land that they know is very, very dangerous and could get a lot of people killed, to a place they know nothing about, especially the capacity of the danger of the place, just for some technology they don't know is there or not. There might be good tech. Maybe we should go send our fighting force halfway across the country. No, actually, it's across the country, just to see, maybe there's something there. Come back if you find anything. But not only that, you send this entire fighting force across this incredibly treacherous, landscape. Right? You send them across this whole nation filled with shit that's gonna kill them. Don't even know how they got the supplies to do this. How they carried, like 3 months of food around with them. To a place that, for all you know, could just be a giant crater in the ground. And they didn't give them their best power armor. Like, the Brotherhood of Steel has T-51B power armor in droves, but apparently they only sent the Fallout 3 Brotherhood out with T-45D. So did they, I'm trying to wrap my head around this. The Brotherhood of Steel in the West Coast, the main guys, right? That's like the main base of the Brotherhood of Steel, who have all their resources and stuff. They have all the guns. They have all the power armor. They're in charge, right? That's HQ for them. They sent out this huge group of their fighters out to a place where they didn't know anything about it, and they only sent them in their kind of meh equipment. They sent them in their outdated pieces of armor. So, did the main Brotherhood of Steel know that this place was super dangerous and think that giving them T-51B was a waste of time? Or did they want them to die because they knew it wasn't their best equipment? And if they wanted them to die, why did they give them power armor at all? If they expected them to die because they knew it was treacherous, why did they send anyone? Were their supplies so tight that they couldn't give any T-51B out because of the war? And if so, why would you send a huge force of your fighters over there? Like, seriously, why is there no T-51B in the entirety of the East Coast Brotherhood? Why does nobody in this world make any kind of sensible decision? Are we just supposed to believe that everyone in Fallout 3 is retarded? If so, then why does Bethesda propose this super serious plotline where everyone's dying and we have to talk about how bad everyone's life is? And I can already hear what some people are going to say. Caption, you're thinking too hard about it, man. You're thinking too hard. You're just thinking too deeply about it. It's just a game, mate. It's just a prank, bro. You're not supposed to think about it, man. It's just a game. You're just supposed to have fun. And that is not an argument. I'm sorry, but you're not supposed to think about it is a terrible argument. A piece of media should not get worse because you think about it, okay? What the hell kind of excuse is that? You're thinking too hard, man. Stop thinking so hard. Just accept what you're being given and like it. It's like whenever I hear somebody say, oh, we should appreciate Bethesda for all the things they do for us. Like, no, they're doing their fucking job. We should not appreciate them. We should criticize them when they make mistakes. Never in your life just sit there and accept something because of who it's made by. I personally believe that there is no criticism too pedantic to make. It doesn't matter how hard it is to find a mistake. If someone finds it, they find it. Especially in a game like Fallout 3 that is trying to be taken at least with some semblance of seriousness. Like, yeah, the world of Fallout 3 is generally not that serious. It's more silly. But the main story sure is trying to be taken seriously. So thinking too hard about it is not an excuse. Perhaps it would be if, the game wasn't trying to be serious at all and acknowledged that thinking about it made it dumb and that it was dumb. Like, if the game itself isn't taking itself seriously, I won't either, okay? I'll still probably think about it and say, oh, that doesn't make any sense, but you can at least just brush it off because the game knows it's not supposed to make sense. For example, let's talk about Undertale's world. I know I should stop talking about Undertale, but it's a good example. Undertale's world is one wherein there are talking flowers, night dogs, and people with cell phones, also in an age where people are using spears. None of that makes any sense, but Undertale doesn't expect you to take it seriously, and it acknowledges the fact that it is completely ridiculous. That's why I didn't criticize that game, because it wasn't trying to be serious. It didn't propose this super serious, edgy, fucking sad story for everybody to try to grip to. And sure, you could have criticized it. I could have criticized it. But Undertale don't care. Undertale doesn't give a shit. Its world does not care. It wants to just tell a funny story. Fallout 3 does care. Fallout 3 is not telling us a funny story, it's telling us a sad story where everyone's dying. And when you propose a serious story like this, where you expect people to take this with some semblance of seriousness and drama, when you have characters and major lore figures and factions acting in completely unsensible ways that aren't even characteristic to themselves, yeah, that's dumb. And when someone finds mistakes in your very, very serious game or story or whatever you're making, it doesn't matter how small that mistake is. Someone found it. But the best part is, this little, like, T45D is the one I know they're going to say I'm thinking too hard about. Because we all know what T45D is really. It's just Bethesda wanted to make a new armor for the cover of the box. That's what they did. That's just what they want. That's what it is, and on a real, on a real level. Some developers, they got together and they just concept arted a new armor in 3D and they made it. However, because they didn't pay enough attention to their story and the source material they were working with, just having T45D on armor and all the soldiers makes up this huge mistake that makes the main Brotherhood of Steel seem like a bunch of inept morons. But then again, I guess that's me just thinking too far into it. And again, I apologize for using my brain. Hi again. You have just finished the part 1 of what is probably going to be 3 parts of a single video. I know this is sort of an abrupt ending where we're just we finished off talking about the Brotherhood of Steel and now we're, stopping, and it's kind of a weird segue because we haven't even gotten to GNR proper yet. But this video is already rearing around 50, 45-ish minutes, which is about the cap of what my computer can usually handle when it comes to actually rendering video, so I'm unfortunately going to have to cut it short here. Of course, I'll be providing a link to the next video once that's done, but for now, you're just gonna have to, you wait. Just wait a little while. I promise it won't take as long as this one. Thank you for making it through up until the end of this video, and please, tell me what you think down in the comments, and if I miss anything, I'll try to get it in the next video. See ya!